Hey everyone, I'm Tracy Layden with Mogul, the diversity recruitment platform and diversified search firm. And it's Hispanic Heritage Month. And today I'm speaking with Tim Grijalva from Godaddy to talk about their Latinx ERG. Hey, Tim.
Hey, Tracy. Hey, everybody. As mentioned, I'm Tim Grijalva. Nice to meet everybody virtually.
So, Tim, tell me about your role at Godaddy.
So my role itself outside of our ERG is I'm director of learning for our learning and talent programs. So Tracy, essentially that means is I help lead a team to meet the vision of our care partners to build some really cool learning experiences that create an awesome customer experience for anybody interacting with Godaddy, but also give our guides the tools and skills they need to be successful.
That's awesome.
I love it.
And what about with your ERG?
I'm co-president of our ERG with my fellow partner, Nicole Hippolito, who she's not here today, but she did allow me to represent us. And essentially, we partner on everything to lead to create some great opportunities to connect virtually with folks in our ERG and just making sure that we're educating and really creating some connection for the folks in this virtual world that we're in.
That's awesome. Did you create the ERG or how long have you been with it?
No, I did not create. I was not one of the founders. Luckily, it was around before myself and Nicole, actually. So I believe that we are running on our 7th year as an ERG. So we have a pretty strong standing for our company itself. And we are pushing over 400 members globally right now.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
7 years means it's existed both before and after the pandemic.
This is true.
How has that changed everything with people being more virtual and, all of the associated stuff that's happened to the societal shifts lately?
Totally. I think probably more time than ever to have an ERG in an organization for sure. I think, prior to the pandemic, we had the luxury of being able to have really cool in-person events and really bring the familia together, right? So we can do cookouts or basketball tournaments, whatever we're doing. And now with the virtual environment, we've been creative a little bit to find things like cafecitos, which are just really virtual connection times that have nothing to do with all of our day-to-day work. It's just really kind of a good mental break. So I think what it's done is kind of required all of us to push the boundaries with creativity on how we can find ways to be disconnected yet very connected on a daily basis.
Totally. So following up on that, what does your ERG do?
Everything, right? No, to be specific, I had mentioned cafecitos. I think that's probably one of our big drivers of just everyday engagement. We don't do them every day, but we do increase the likelihood of those happening a few times a week, if not monthly. And really, this is just a first level of connection for people to leave their day to day, much like we used to do around the water cooler or walk into a food truck at Godaddy. Godaddy was really big for the environment of food and just connectivity in that way.
Yeah.
So this gave just an hour window that folks, either myself or the other co-president, or we do have a core leadership team that help us support our global ERG, that they might host a topic like what are, Latinx birthdays, or what are your favorite, salsa things or things to do with your family. And it's just really a cool time for people to disconnect and get together. In addition to that, we have a Godaddy Literature Club, so kind of a cool name on our acronym. And they're really dedicated to educating folks on the vast background of all of our cultures. That's kind of the cool thing about being Latin or Latino is it means we can be from all over the place, right? Whether it's South America, parts of Europe, here in North America. And because of that, I think it's important. And some of the things our ERG does is focus on that education piece. And then lastly, Tracy, community involvement is probably the biggest thing where our ERG has the biggest impact. Whether that is volunteering our time virtually or in person, we just did a canned food drive last week, or every year we do a season of giving where not only our ERG, but Godaddy itself contributes to some of the families that are most in need during our holiday season here in the Americas.
That's amazing. That sounds like such a fun sense of community.
It truly is something that we're proud of and that we strive for quite a bit. I think one thing about our ERG is they have a voice and they love to use it. And they are absolutely letting us know that any opportunity that they can have to have impact outside of their day-to-day, they want to do it. And myself, my co-president and our leadership team, we try to do all that we can, even with our heavy workloads, to create those opportunities for folks.
From the company perspective and talking about like workload and balancing the ERG, when companies are talking about adding DEIB initiatives, they often talk about, we want to start an ERG, which is awesome. Yeah. But from like the president's perspective, how do you go about managing both your everyday workload and the ERG And how can companies respect that balance?
Totally. Tracy, that's a really big box to unpackage, but it's an important one, especially for individuals that might be watching this that are like, I see a lot of value. I just don't know how to do it. And I think a big part of this is creating value at a senior leadership level within the organization. And what I mean by that is basically showing how these type of ERG programs benefit the culture in a lot of different ways. They help with retention. They also help with employee engagement, which in turn can help organizations hit their metrics and KPIs. It also helps with just that overall employee involvement. So I think one of the first steps I would recommend is make sure that your vision is delivered at a leadership level. That also can help build standard procedures for ERG folks to follow, which are really important. Part of the challenge, Tracy, is you have folks that are leading ERGs or involved with ERGs that are typically highly engaged employees. Well, that typically means that they also carry a pretty busy workload between their 9 to 5 as well. So if you think about creating space for an individual to be creative and tap into that cultural passion, you really have to make sure that it's an easy process. Is there an instruction booklet almost? Is there SOP, standard operating procedures, when they want to order swag or they want to create an in-person event that they can clearly follow and get the proper legal protocols for that to happen? And then the last step I would probably say that would be important is for those individuals that are looking to start or really get involved, have an open conversation with your leader about why that's important to you and how you see this not only helping yourself as an employee and kind of build your leadership skills and grow in your career, but also how this can really help level up that organization when it comes to their actual environment and culture itself.
So how would you say in the events you described felt, very community building? How do you balance that like sense of community versus the like interacting with the company at large and with the allies within that company and talking about, more official subjects like hiring or how do we make companies more diverse versus, that food truck feeling? How does that come across, in the day-to-day ERG life?
Yeah, well, I'm hoping I'm going to answer your question here. And if not, you can totally steer me into the right area, Tracy. But I think a part of that is making sure the ERGs are aligned to what the overall organization is aligning towards. So for example, at GoDaddy, career development is incredibly important to maintain what we feel is the best talent in the world. Which means an ERG needs to have a focus on how we develop the critical skills at all levels, because that's the great thing about an ERG. Titles of what your day-to-day job don't matter. We are a family. We come together as a resource group. So whether you're a VP or a frontline employee, it's all the same. And that's a really important part, that we come together and we share things like how to build a resume, how to rock out an awesome interview, or a really important one, especially for folks at GoDaddy, is what's your brand and how do you establish that professional and that networking brand? So I would say a part of that is, yes, we do spend time on talking about fun things like cultural traditions and food and things like that, but we also spend an equal amount of time talking about the importance of exposure, about underrepresentation, and about how we as ERGs, whether it's lit, if it's Black in technology, Asian in technology, United, that we all have an opportunity to give these chances to upskill everybody to match kind of the mission and the vision that the company is going in.
That's fantastic. And yes, that does answer my question.
Cool. Thanks.
Great job. So the name of your ERG is GoDaddy Latinx and Technology.
That's right.
And it's Hispanic Heritage Month.
Yes.
So first question, what are you doing for Hispanic Heritage Month, if anything?
This year is going to be probably our best Hispanic Heritage Month at GoDaddy yet. One of the biggest things I'm super excited for is we have partnered with our marketing team at GoDaddy to bring in Hispanic influencers that are having a really big impact in our community. And the cool thing about this is not only are they representation of our heritage, they're also our actual customers that are using our products. Why I'm so excited about this actually lends back to a little bit of our virtual environment and story that you're asking about. I think one of the challenges when you are a company that serves customers like GoDaddy is, since we've been virtual, we've lost that connection to what our actual customers look and feel like and sound like, because we're all working from home now. Right. This really gives our ERG a great opportunity to hear from folks that look like us, that sound like us, that may have the same similar upbringings and challenges and victories, to know that, hey, it's totally possible to be a successful entrepreneur and an influencer in all kinds of different industries. So we have a few influencers coming in that are going to share their stories. We're going to highlight them as GoDaddy as a company and show their great work as well too. So that's super exciting. We're also doing things like salsa contests. We're going to have some education around Dia de los Muertos and just fun things that are also culturally enriching, give us a chance to celebrate some of those honorage of our heritage and ancestors before, but also be able to pour back and teach others and learn about our business a little bit further.
That sounds like so much fun.
Yeah, I'm really excited, probably more so for the salsa recipes that we're going to see coming through as well, too.
Oh, yeah.
But also, one thing I failed to mention is we have something really cool as an organization coming up at Godaddy, and it actually starts September 14th and 15th, and it's called Godaddy Learning Days. So imagine an organization that dedicates 2 days to learning. Doesn't matter what you're going to learn, just learn something, right? Learn a few things if you can. And a part of that is Hispanic heritage. So the ERG is going to be hosting these sessions where people all over the world in Godaddy can come in for 15, 20 minutes, learn some really cool things about our cultures, and then just leave enriched knowing how we can truly appreciate this specific month.
That is so cool. I love that.
Thank you. I'm excited. I really am.
Do you tend to host these events mostly for the members of your ERG or for allies in the rest of the company?
Yeah, it's important that we also represent our allies as well, too. In fact, that really leads into your diversity question that you asked me a little bit earlier is, I think one of the big things that we can do is just make sure that awareness and representation and celebration of our allies is there along with our actual ERG. So to answer your question, even though it might be a GD Lit event, we always open it up to not only our other ERGs, but also our allies to come in and celebrate it with us. Like I said, that familia vibe, siempre familia is what we talk about, which is always family. So whether you're an ally or you actually represent with that culture, absolutely come and celebrate with us.
That's fabulous. So as you're interacting with allies in the rest of the company, how can allies support their Hispanic colleagues, both in honor of the month and also throughout the rest of the year? Yeah,
of course, right? Like that's a really good question. It's not just about September 15th through October 15th for sure, And I think that's one of the cool things about being an ally is you don't have to do much to be an ally other than just raise your awareness and support when you can. And that would probably be my biggest tip for folks. They really maybe not identify with a specific ERG, but man, are they really wanting to help and they want to get involved, and being an ally is probably one of the best ways to do that as well. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Raise your hand and volunteer to get in with that ERG, Tracy. If it's like I said, if it's Asian in tech or Black in tech, Latin in tech, and you don't represent with that culture, still raise your hand. Come on board. We can use all the knowledge. We can use all the assistance and hands to help us make change, and that would be very, very helpful for folks. So I think they also get exposures to really cool topics that are often discussed within ERGs that they can then take out and kind of share within their families. And we always talk about change starts at the smallest level. Yes. And that's a really cool, easy way that takes almost no additional effort to actually kind of grow your awareness and grow others as well.
Yeah. Speaking of changes, have there been any cool, exciting changes that your ERG has been able to make within either your organization or elsewhere?
Oh, man. I can't say our specific ERG. That would be unfair to all the others, because I think one of the cool things that we have is we have a dedication to our ERGs at Godaddy itself. What I can say that I really, truly feel that we've done over the last 2 years is raise the importance of what ERGs can do for the company itself. We recently brought on a new VP of diversity and inclusion, and that step right there for Godaddy really helps open the door a lot more to educate the employees on the power of ERGs and the power of folks when they come together and represent. In addition to that, I think one of the things that we've probably have done as well is raise the importance for virtual events, because before Godaddy was really heavy with boots on the ground, right? We would go out, we would support in person wearing our cool swag, and we've needed to get creative as far as how do we still represent and help others out, even virtual. And to give a really cool example of that, there is something that GoDaddy is hosting with all of the ERGs, which is an opportunity for all of us to just spend some time reviewing high school students' future resumes, regardless of whatever cultural background or what they identify with, to really help them understand some of the ways that they can pivot their resume to highlight some of their cool strengths and skills that they already have. So I would just say, as a whole, all of us advocating for the importance of what we bring, advocating for virtual virtual events, even though we're not in person, has probably changed the game a little bit as far as how ERGs operate here at GoDaddy.
How many ERGs do you have at GoDaddy?
Oh boy,
Approximate's fine.
Yeah, I would probably say around 10. I can probably go through and find some documentation of that, but we have everything from Veterans United, Green, Asians in Tech, Black in Tech, Latin in Tech. I know I'm probably going to Fitness in Tech, Veterans in Tech, if I haven't said that already. So we have abilities, GD abilities as well too. So there's an extensive list for sure. I was just talking to somebody today about an opportunity to possibly create another ERG to represent a specific culture within the company as well too. So I think that's kind of cool that as a company, we're really encouraged to think about what have we not gotten right with our ERG system and what do we need to improve a little bit.
How does the creation process work? Someone says, hey, I have an idea.
I think it's about collaboration and really speaking it out loud and getting some feedback and advice, right? If you have an idea. So my next steps here is I'm going to talk with Christy, who I had mentioned is our new VP of diversity, and really mention kind of the need and kind of see if that's been brought up by any others as well too. And then potentially she'll spearhead that conversation with some of the other GoDaddy presidents for the ERGs and figure out what that looks like itself. So I think a part of that is just actually having the conversation and raising awareness. And then back to my points I made earlier, building value. And this specific ERG I have in mind is very valuable to the area that GoDaddy is actually based out of here in Arizona. So I do see value for these employees to make sure that if they are looking for that representation, that they do see it there.
That's awesome. I love that you have this culture of both having ERGs and embracing them. And you mentioned figuring out how they can improve too. Yeah. How does that process work? Is there something, it sounded like you were thinking of something specific when you said that.
Well, it's actually from everything ground level up. And I think that's the amazing thing is I think it speaks to the maturity of where GoDaddy is already at with our ERG systems. We've been lucky that a lot of ERGs have been around for close to a decade here. So that's allowed us to have a lot of victories and also a lot of lessons learned as well. I think when it comes to some of the areas of improvement is just, making sure that we come together and we talk about how we can improve our overall procedures as an ERG. We're all doing some really cool things, but making sure that we're melding the minds, sharing those best practices and documenting them so the processes are a lot easier for all of us to follow is more crucial than ever now, just because of how busy a lot of us are becoming. So as far as ideas, I think that's a big part of it. And then also we're truly encouraged. We get together at least on a monthly basis. And that is we get together a lot more than that, but a mandatory, I would say, at least on a monthly basis, where we get in there and we share opportunities and ideas that we have. And something that recently spearheaded Tracy in one of those meetings was we've identified that there's an opportunity for GD abilities and GD lit to cross-collaborate during the month of October, because abilities has some important things going on during the month of October. So what we've done is we've done a call for speakers. It's the first time that we've done this cross-collaboration between the two ERGs to bring in somebody that represents from both of our ERGs to let everybody know their story, that there's possibilities and ways to connect. And a lot of the times when we do these things, it's to inspire folks to potentially share those stories, to maybe take back home and say, hey, you know what? We're not alone in this. I heard from this situation and there's positive light at the end of the tunnel or something like that. So I would probably say that's a lot of the conversations that are happening right now is just how can we cross collaborate more and improve some of our processes?
I mean, intersectionality is incredibly important. And I love that you're going to, embrace more of that and talk about how can you do that?
Yep. And it also speaks back to the allies question, right? By cross-collaborating, you now have folks that maybe have been really, truly focused on their own siloed ERG. And now they just raise awareness like, whoa, I can actually be in multiple, or I can be an ally here as well, too.
What would you say to somebody who is starting their ERG or has an existing one, but wants to build it up? What would be your tips for them?
I think you got to get the voice. That's typically the voice and the data is where I like to start. And maybe that's a little bit of the analytical mind coming into play. But really where I think it comes down to is you want to almost tailor make something that's going to be impactful for the people. And I think by really getting a poll out there or a survey, whether that's in person, if that's what the organizations are about right now, if it's via survey that people can answer anonymously behind a screen and be able to provide their true voice, get that feedback and understand where the employees are feeling that they need the most connectivity in. Then it comes down to taking that information and then building value, building that case for the leadership team that I talked about. And the reason that's important is that opens the door now for folks to say, you know what, you can stretch some of your time to be able to do this important movement. So I would say get the voice of your people, make sure you're building that value point, and then just making sure you're tailoring it to those that you're really looking to impact.
That's fantastic advice.
Yeah, we probably can sit for a whole hour or so, an evening or so, and talk about that topic. And I would totally be down to do it, but that's probably where I would start. And if there's folks that are watching this, they're like, I need to know more specifics, Mister. Let's chat.
Yeah, we can always talk more, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So with your experience with this ERG so far, one of the big questions, I suppose, where do you think they're going to go in the future with all of the conversations about diversity and making ERGs more important? In Godaddy, it sounds like they very much are, and some companies are just starting their journey with this. But what do you think the next step is? Where do you think we're going to take ERGs next?
Oh, I get excited by that question. And I think the first area that I want to focus on is the the people aspect first. I think we talk a lot about diversity and awareness, and I think ERGs in the future are going to find really cool platforms just like this, actually, to share out very wide the impact that a small story has on a large organization. I think that can create a massive ripple that needs to happen for folks to say, you know what, I am passionate about that. I can stretch myself in my current role to have some impact here. And I actually care enough about the culture that I work in to have this type of awareness. And I want to be the person that brings that over. I think that's probably number one that's going to happen on the people side. On the business side, I think there's going to be a lot more data that's going to justify some full-time positions being created to dedicate to ERGs themselves. Mm-hmm. Most folks that are in an ERG role, this is a side gig for us. This is kind of something that we do off of the side of our desk on top of everything else. And it's still manageable. I do think that there's going to be enough data that's going to show retention is going to spike from a massive amount of ERGs that are out there, because now employees are not feeling excluded. They're feeling more included, especially with the younger generation that are coming in. We do know based on engagement that these folks aren't just motivated by metrics and money. A lot of them are motivated by impact and actual involvement in the vision. ERGs speak directly to that. So I can easily see in the future, a very near future actually, where these ERG roles that are dedicated to it become almost full-time roles, that this is what they do day in and day out to create the exposure, to create the opportunities and process, and just the ERGs to continue to grow within their spotlight months, their communications, and some of the ways that they're pulling back that voice from their people.
I could totally see that happening.
Cool. And let's put that out there in the world, right?
Right. And when you talk about data and collecting that data and presenting that to the company, what sort of data do you think would be useful to show the business case?
Sure. And I think probably, Tracy, where to start with that is you don't have to be fancy with data, right? Well, we're not talking about Tableau reports. We're not talking about huge charts. I mean, that definitely is super nice. If you're at that level, do it. I'm even talking about running something as simple as a Microsoft Forms survey or a SurveyMonkey survey, asking about what's important to folks. If they had a group that they would dedicate to or connect to, what would that be? And what would they want that group to actually focus on? That type of anecdotal data that we can take back and say, here's the voice. Here are actual written words from people that work here and some of the stuff that they want to see us do. And you know what? I want to charge that way and do it for us. That's pretty powerful. And then there is strength in numbers as well, too. So if you do have some better tools that can track, if people are looking at your Slack post, by the way, there is a way to track analytical data in Slack. It's pretty easy to do.
There is.
I know, right? You just got to get with your Slack admins. They can enable it for you. You can see a specific trend of an exact post that you've done and how many folks have read it, opened it, respond to it, all kinds of cool stuff. And then the same thing with email. We work for Godaddy, so we do have email marketing tools, but there are a lot of other tools out there that if you're looking to send a survey or a comm out and you're really looking to see how many folks read this within the organization, that's great data to actually have as well, too. And then probably one more, if you do host an event, have people sign in, get that strength in numbers to saying, hey, we used to have 5 and then it grew to 10 and now we're at 50. So there's definitely a need here, people. I think that's the type of data. And again, really emphasizing that it doesn't have to be masterful and beautiful. It could just be simple and impactful.
I mean, that makes total sense. To show, just that there's interest, that is a group of people here. I imagine that helps get funding and support?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the biggest thing that it really helps drive a lot of the fundage for us is how many are actually participating in our ERG ourselves. How are we tracking that? We do have a lot of tools in place to help us do that. And then most importantly as well, too, is when we are having these events, and especially if they're costing money through our budget, what value are we seeing coming back because of that spend to the business itself? And, I mentioned things that don't cost money, like hosting events for like career development, for example, and being able to see how many people are going to those and reporting back to you in a way of like, hey, I got a promotion this year, tying that type of stuff back is super impactful as well.
Right. Because that sort of thing can be difficult to track, right?
Totally. Yeah. And it's really just coming down to asking people to follow back up with you. Remember, I said it doesn't have to be fancy, right? So if you set that stage of like, folks, we're really truly here and we're invested in you, and come back to us. You don't have to wait for these sessions. Ping us, email us, smoke signal us, however you need to get a hold of us for additional help. Well, you know what ends up happening in those relationships is you build rapport with these people, and they almost always come back and say, great news. I just got my second interview for this job. And even if I don't get it, I know I wouldn't have gotten it if it wasn't for that specific seminar that I went to with your ERG. Thank you. That type of stuff moves the needle and fills the bucket for a lot of folks.
Oh, I love that. Do you have any good stories along those lines?
Oh, of course. I think one of the coolest things that we've had recently is, I think, to our career branding. So career branding was something that we knew we needed to get right. And we had an amazing person who just had this fantastic brand outside of Godaddy that was starting to teach us how we do it internally. And I'm thinking about this specific person. I'm not going to share the details because I definitely don't have permission to do so. But this was an individual that was involved in 2 ERGs. Oh, I just thought of another ERG, entrepreneurs in tech. Of course, we're Godaddy. We support entrepreneurs. We need to have that, right?
Cool.
This specific employee was involved in entrepreneurs in tech and GD Lit as well, and was really looking to establish her brand and start her business. And with what she picked up from how you brand and what she picked up with some of the overall tools and interviewing skills and just kind of establishing that from internally, she actually was able to start her website, started getting some traction in there. And I think that it is going pretty decent from what I understand. So good luck to her.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. So we've talked a lot about the business case, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I'd like to return back to Hispanic Heritage Month and you.
Sure.
Well, first things first, do you prefer Hispanic or Latinx?
I am in the bucket of it doesn't necessarily directly matter to me. I think for the longest time, I identified as Chicano. I identified as Latino. And it wasn't until probably the last few years, 2-3 years, did I really start understanding the different ways that people are referred to. And I think Godaddy had a lot to do with that. It actually had everything to do with it. Mm-hmm. So for me, Latinx, Hispanic, I do know it is a hot topic that we are going to get right at Godaddy. We are going to have some focus groups. We're going to meet with our new leader of diversity to understand the right approach to this. I think regardless of what the preference is and how folks like to be referred to, we just want to make sure that we find a term that makes people feel connected and not disconnected itself. So for me, my dad always says, as long as you don't call me late to dinner, I'm happy. That's kind of me. I more so, I identify with me and my story versus maybe the title that people might put onto me itself.
Totally. So how do you, as a not late to dinner person.
Never, by the way, never.
How do you, as a Latinx person, how is that? What has been your experience in tech? And even better if there's an ERG connection. But what are some challenges you faced?
I haven't had any challenges directly. And that's been really nice for me. And it could potentially be because of the area that I live in. I do live in Arizona, there is a large Hispanic Latino population here in Arizona. I have worked for a few tech companies at this point, and all of my experiences have been fantastic. I do have to say that Godaddy has been special. From day one, I immediately found the sense of culture, which is something I wanted to be a part of. That is actually why I got involved. I saw the work that the ERGs were doing, and I was looking for an opportunity to expand outside of my actual leader ability. And I just wanted to give back in a way that was It didn't take a lot of my personal time outside of work to find events or things on Google to sign myself or my family up. It was there at work for me, and it was almost being delivered for me to just kind of show up, if you will. That sense and how easy it was for me at Godaddy fueled me to have a much larger impact in the presidency role itself. And now I'm fueled to be an executive sponsor one day for an ERG because I want to have a much larger impact, right? So I'm a lucky one, I think. What I can tell you is there truly is a sense of underrepresentation in technology, period. And I think the Latin culture specifically does have a strong underrepresentation. And that's something that my co-presidents and our leaders are actively talking about is how do we create opportunities to represent our culture well? And this is why we're truly excited about our influencers coming in to really tell that story and to connect with folks. And for folks that are out there experiencing challenges, I think it's important to know that I realize that, you're not alone for sure. Hopefully there is an ERG or a resource out there that can help you. And there are connection points outside of your organization to connect to. Sounds like Mogul is probably a really cool platform to start with that. But just find folks that are out there that share the same passion for you and probably can share some tips and advice to make your path a little bit easier. Definitely not alone. And that's one of the things that ERGs will teach you is, though we're all very specific are focused on our careers, and a lot of us are virtual right now, we're far from alone. And as long as you can find that resource group out there to support you, you'll get it.
Well, that was a fantastic piece of advice. And you beat me to what my final question was going to be.
Oh, yay, even better.
That's for people looking for ERGs. How about for other ERG leaders? Do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, I would say stay engaged. Even if you are facing some challenges or you've just come out of a really busy wave for your ERG, stay engaged. If you have a leadership team, if you're a leader that has a core team underneath you, utilize them and give them opportunities to develop their skills and create those benchmarks. That way, when you pass the baton to the next, it is something where they can literally outstand your footprint. They can expand it a little bit further, take some of the great things that you're doing and grow them a little bit further. And for those that don't have the luxury of having a leadership team, look at how you can start establishing one. Have somebody that can help you specifically with your comms and level that area up and alleviate some of the load that you might be taking on. If there's a social aspect within your organization that you can use some assistance on, don't be afraid to tap some folks on the shoulders. Obviously, get the proper approvals for your business and the leaders to do so. But having that help is something that's very important. Just realize you don't have to do it by yourself. And the same advice that I shared for folks that might be feeling a little singled out is there are a lot of ERG leaders out there. In fact, you just go to LinkedIn, type ERG leader, and you'll get a whole list of them. I bet you anything, a lot of those folks would be more than happy to jump on a Zoom call. I, for one, would be more than happy to share my experience out and connect one-on-one with anybody that would like to.
That was fantastic. And I love the theme of connection in both of those pieces of advice, that if you're not feeling alone, or if you are feeling alone, that's exactly what ERGs are here for. That's exactly what groups of this type are for. They already exist. You don't necessarily need to create one.
That's right.
And then if your organization does need one, you can create one.
Yeah. And I think it takes a vision and it takes a passion and some dedication. And obviously some of those can be much harder than others, depending on the how large your organization is. But start small, right? If you're a part of a large organization, but you have a small remote site, maybe start there. If it's just a group of you that are remote, start with the remote folks and grow from there. Doesn't have to be something huge, and it doesn't have to be perfect at first.
That takes a lot of the pressure off.
Definitely.
Just get together, right?
Yeah, totally. And I said perfect at first. It doesn't have to be perfect at all. Like, we're human. We're going to make mistakes. It happens.
Totally. Well, I love that. And I feel like that's a great place to wrap up. Thank you so much, Tim.
Awesome, Tracy. I appreciate the interview. I really enjoy you giving an opportunity and a voice for our ERGs and the importance of them and what they can do for our community. And I just want to throw it out there one more time, Tracy, if it's cool. Folks, if you're out there watching and you looking for some advice or somebody to connect to, more than happy to connect with you. Hopefully they tag us or put some information on in the interview, but you're not alone. Seek the help that you need.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, Tracy, thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for putting me on the hot seat.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.
Very, very cool.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah.